Hear it in your head.
I always complain that I can't hear the build-up music, so I don't know where we are.
I can hear it. I can hear the tune.
All right. Well, we are back
from Utah.
And it's been less than 2 weeks since we recorded.
We did a good job, especially with travel.
Mm-hmm.
And you're fast.
I'm not.
Yeah,
fast.
we're gonna get into it. And don't take off on me on this podcast.
I know. There was someone at our house last podcast waiting, and so for 15 minutes. And so that's why if you were watching the video, I was so distracted on my phone the last 10, 15 minutes. And as soon as he said mic's off, I was like, okay, I gotta go.
All right, so amazing trip. I'd say
it was a great trip.
Like just going to Utah was like one of our top trips.
Who knew Utah was it? You know, so we have always been, oh my gosh, when the kids all flee the nest, if you will.
Where are we going to go?
We are going to go to Lake Tahoe.
Yeah.
We've totally abandoned that idea now. It is Utah. Yeah. We are going to Utah.
You still need good exposure and time in Canada to compare.
Y'all, he wants me to become a Canadian.
Right as I'm working on being an American.
I know. Yeah.
But yeah, so why was it so good? I think like it was just so accessible and reasonable cost. Like you can fly right to Salt Lake City. The flights for one were way better than going to Reno.
Very family oriented.
Obviously, Utah. Yeah. Everywhere,
there
babies
was
like
a
this
newborn
big.
baby everywhere we went.
Like
it didn't matter what
on
you
the
were
marathon
doing.
course, like anywhere.
Everywhere, marathon, at the park, where you were paragliding.
So many parks.
There was a park on every corner.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
Tons of parks and accessibility between like living your life in town with everything that we're kind of used to, and then like straight into the mountains. Like there's very little
and you know what?
Transition overlap there.
And I don't want, everyone to flee to Utah now.
I know.
But there was a significant lack of people on the trails.
Quiet.
It was so quiet.
Summer.
And you know what? I love seeing people on the trails. It's great. But when I'm trying to trail run, it is annoying. And
or just drive. Like even the drives
true.
Really tight corner, like really narrow driving.
Well, it reminded us of a beautiful drive we did in Italy.
Yeah, on that Alpine Pass that we did up behind the Timp Mountain, and went to Sundance.
Yeah.
And like there was nobody. I mean, it was quiet.
Right.
Yeah, so definitely won our hearts over this weekend going to Utah, and it was a big success.
Yep.
Where do we even start with everything? We went for the marathon, so.
The whole trip was based around Utah Valley and going for the marathon. And I think from, the last podcast, and I'll recap, I wasn't able to run Houston or Woodlands, which is what I wanted to originally train for. And I was training for until the miscarriages, essentially. And then I lowered my mileage and kept a base of running.
Yeah, you were going with
and I just said, I'm gonna
just going to Memorial.
Yeah, I'm just gonna do a holistic health, run because I love it, but do other stuff too, and not train for anything anymore. But so much time has passed.
You kind of ate your own words in, I am the master of no training.
Well, I didn't train, that's the thing. And I was running maybe a 50K a week, so 30 miles a week.
Total,
but I kept a long run. But it's not because I wanted to keep it, it's because I love the long run.
Yeah.
But I did zero speed work. The only speed work I did was this week together with you. And that was like
And it's not
mild.
that like I didn't, as a coach, give you guided workouts to do. It's just you miss them because of various things, fatigue.
Well, I spent
the travel.
2 weeks jet lagged, Japan travel. And then it was so close and it just, fatigue and everything.
Start the taper.
Yeah, and he doesn't coach me really.
No, I never have.
And that's something that I've never really wanted from him. But I did ask you to coach me a little bit the last, we signed up maybe 5 weeks in advance.
Yeah, it was more just like workout ideas.
What workout should I do?
Yeah.
But that's the only thing you would give me guidance on.
Yeah. But it got me thinking yesterday on my run, I was like, is no training the new training?
Because I didn't train. I called you the master of no training.
And look, we see so many athletes just bury themselves in, and I'm not talking the ones I coach, but some athletes that even I coach just bury themselves in the training, forgetting about the sleep, the like other stresses of life. Like they just continue on like nothing else is happening. Whereas like when anything else happens in our lives, it's like we hit pause on something. Like something's got to give, right?
That's an interesting point. I haven't thought about this before. Real thoughts going here. When I was training for Houston Marathon,
Which was 5 years ago?
No. This January.
Okay, gotcha.
And then I dropped out. I felt so fast and I was doing all this speed work.
Right, you feel fast. Yeah.
But you know what? My goal time was the same, if not a little slower. And now I felt like after
less prepared.
All of those stressors, I didn't do the speed work. I was less prepared. But I was now, because I'm trying, we're trying to have a family and I'm trying to do all these things. I was really focused on de-stressing my life, having more holistic health, sleeping better, while just maintaining a base of running because I love it.
Yeah, exactly.
That took away all of that pressure to where I'm not in my head, oh my God, I have to perform, or I have to do this, or I have to do that.
Yeah.
And, maybe that is the key of like, you take a little bit of a step back.
Yeah.
I could have added in that speed work and had that
For sure,
edge.
you could have been sharper. You could have had some gear changes and snuck in under another
having
barrier.
my mind down a little bit less to where I'm focusing on holistic health, adding in maybe a little bit more edge, I think you do better.
Yeah, and I mean, even the ones I coach, look at how many times I put rest day on the schedule and there's a run.
Yeah.
And it's just like, why? Why did you run? Why did you have to run today? Why did you have to run more today?
So I was actually looking at Connor Mantz's Strava this week.
Who you got to meet.
Who we met. So, and we'll get to that. But on the training point, I was looking at his Strava and his easy days of people that are running, let's say 2:35 or less. Yep. His easy days are slower than those people that we know running between 2:25 and 2:35.
Yeah.
Except he's running sub 2:10.
He's running sub 2:05. Like he's basically like he's a 2:0 guy.
But the point is he's doing more easy. We kind of met him. He was relaxed.
No, there's a little bit of altitude, like which the workout we'll get into in a minute. But like there's some altitude conversion. He's high mileage, but I mean, you look at what pros are doing. They're prioritizing recovery, and now they have more time to recover. They're not jumping from this podcast back to work, to kids, to meals, to work like constantly, like we are.
Yeah, but you mentioned altitude. I got asked during the race, and we've talked about this before, is altitude harder or humidity harder?
Yeah. Even one of the elite team members asked us that, the Nike guy.
Yeah. And it's humidity is harder for me.
Oh, for sure.
And I was running with that guy the whole time, and I'm skipping the pacer. And he asked me, he's like, okay, the last 6 miles, kind of talking to the group in the beginning of, it's going to get hot, it's going to be 70. And I'm like, 70? What are we talking about
30
here?
degrees
cooler. And he's like, but altitude should be hard for you. And I think we both talked about, we didn't feel the altitude.
That was strange. For sure, at the same elevation, most other places we travel, like I'll just know, like it's not like affecting me per se, but it's like, I can tell we're at altitude. Like I can have a feeling of it.
When we start driving up to Lake Tahoe, like over the mountains at Lake Tahoe, I feel that in my head.
Yeah, exactly. And we went to that altitude. So anyways, So getting in, really cool airport, like love like all the art and all the like the cleanliness of Salt Lake too.
Right.
Which was
and to recap, the whole trip was based around, I'm gonna go hop in this marathon. But we decided to go early so you could get some flying in.
Yeah, so here's looking This is called the Widowmaker. So we stayed in this really cool
The
Airbnb
hill, yeah, that trail.
on Steep Mountain, and it is very steep. This is a 1/4 mile long
you gained
trail.
how much elevation in the
Over
1/4 mile?
600 feet at 49%. And this is on the trail. It was just like you're going backwards, and there's actually a really raggedy rope that I used the first time. The next time I found a pretty good spot. But this hill is one of the most popular hang gliding and paragliding sites in the country for the US. Probably not as popular as somewhere like in Europe, but there's people there every day if the conditions allow for it. And there's really interesting because I've like grown up in this sport. The amount of speed wings and mini wings that you got to see, like I had actually never even seen.
They were insane.
Like dive bombing
I didn't
the hill.
take any videos of it.
Yeah, I don't have any right now, I don't think.
But they were, you see that, that's you.
Paragliding. Is that me? No,
No. So that's paragliding, but the wing on those guys was smaller.
Almost like a
And they
kite.
were just doing like loop-de-loops all around.
Just going Mach 3.
Crazy.
Yeah. So, yeah, I got 3 flights total, hiked 1,000 feet at least for each one of them. So I got really good hike and fly, combining the fitness. And we're going back to that area in September to actually hike and fly in more of a, it's a competition, but I'm in like more of a recreational exploration division for that race. And yeah, it's just like good to get the fitness. Like the conditions weren't like exactly what I was looking for. I wanted to stay up obviously longer and fly more. But
I was actually surprised at the, I guess, lack of amount of flying.
Nobody was soaring.
Well, and when we were there, during the day, the wind is bad. And then in the evenings that we had designated for flying, it was so windy.
Yeah, and that's the risk there. And that site in particular, you can just get, there's a huge caution there of the wind, and you kind of got to experience like kind of the decision making and like the warnings that were heeded by everybody there.
I was actually that was a nice thing for me to see. I think that, it's been interesting coming into your life now, not really having exposure to this.
Or understanding.
Or understanding of it ever.
Or knowledge of what it is.
And then immediately get thrown into very strong opinions by family and friends.
Yeah.
Against it, against you doing it. And of course, when I see these reactions, I think, what am I missing? Is this so bad? Oh my gosh, you're gonna die,
Well, of course, like anytime you ever talk about hang gliding or paragliding with like just general public, it's, oh, I knew a guy that died. Like we got it today.
Yeah.
Oh, I knew a guy that died that way. I know a guy that smashed in and
But
whatever.
let's take a step back. So my uncle got into skydiving at one point, and his instructor did it for years and years and years and years and years. And one day he died,
Yeah.
And he'd done it for years and years and years and years. And now
Of skydiving?
Of skydiving.
Okay, just
and
making
now, and skydiving's kind of one of those things, that people are, I want to do it once,
Oh yeah, for sure.
But it's risky too,
Yeah.
But now that's something that area of the family's like, oh my gosh.
Nobody can ever do it.
Right.
Yeah.
And because a guy, but you could say that about rock climbing. You could say that about a variety of things.
Running.
Running.
Obviously,
anything.
and I've always been good about this. Like I never make the case of, well, it's more dangerous to drive down the highway.
Y'all, it is more dangerous to drive down
Houston.
I-10. In Houston especially. I'm just saying.
Well, wasn't it funny to be on a chairlift with me? And
Oh my gosh, yeah, we're kind of jumping all over the place, but we did go up a chairlift on the last day after I ran the marathon at Sundance, and he's freaking out.
Not freaking, but
He's
I'm
not
like
freaking out, but he's uncomfortable.
I was like,
He says, and to him, he just doesn't like anything he can't control.
yeah, I was like, yeah, you're like, why are you freaking out? Like, I mean, like, 'cause I knew we were safe. Like, there was a chance that because we didn't use the bar, that like you fall forward.
Yeah.
And so, you like,
Sorry,
in my
Mom, I
head,
didn't use the bar.
in my head, I'm like, again, it's kind of like we talked about some of those mindset things of risk and all of that, of just like, like what could possibly go wrong here, right?
Yeah.
If somebody gets hurt at the top, they're going to slam on the brakes and then we're going to fly forward. And then, but that wasn't the issue. Like I knew like, so we took some risks there, which is like kind of what you do when you're
And we didn't put the bar down, the safety bar down, you know?
Right. We took some risks just going.
Yeah.
Right. Like anything could happen. It was so hot. Like imagine that thing broke down and we were on there for 3 hours. My quads were fried.
I mean, there was a guy that did a little bit of hiking and he was over on the side of the trail puking.
He had
and just
full on heat
exhaustion.
Heat stroke.
And it's 85 degrees.
Yeah, it was, we were
But the
chilly.
sun's beaming down and we were at 9,000 feet.
And we weren't sweating.
No.
But like this guy was soaked like, under his backpack. Anyway. But then, there was that really steep section on the chairlift, and it's just like, I don't have any controls. Like, I don't get to choose like what we're doing here. So that felt like out of control feeling.
Yeah. So going back to the hang gliding, paragliding, it's been an interesting experience for me because, you know, as your wife, I want to support you in the best way possible, you know, and as much as I can, and I don't want to shut down your passions.
Yeah, and it truly is, and it's like
right, and
rather than having the discussions of like, whoa, so and so I know died doing it, it's like when you get into a group of pilots, it's like you're talking about the good times that you have and safety too, but like, it's hard to explain the experience and feeling. And we met a couple on our trip that was really cool from Denver, and kind of they're like, why do you like it, you know? And it's like harnessing the energy of nature. Like it's a very unique feeling. And
I watch you do it and I watch your passion and I see how interesting it is. And now I find myself, what is the wind doing? Oh, you know, I'm kind of curious. I'm not passionate about it, but I'm curious. And I'm trying to separate out very strong opinions by people close to us versus how do I be a supportive wife? And you've done a very good job of explaining things to me. And I will say, so, you know, we've had fights about this in the beginning because I didn't know anything. You hadn't done it in years and are getting back to it. And there was a lot of strong opinions about you getting back into it. And so, you know, that kind of culmination of things in the beginning was really hard for me to kind of formulate my own opinions. And I am supportive of it. I still am learning and I still have hesitation, but I love to see your passion. And every time I see you go through this decision-making process of, oh, it's not safe, or I tell you, oh, why don't you go hang glide off the Y in Provo, Utah, or paraglide off the Y in Provo, Utah and come down.
Site.
You said, no, you know, I'm not comfortable yet because I would want to go with someone that knows first, you know? And so all of these things help my confidence in you and your ability to make the right decision, because you do have kids and we are going to have kids and you do have a family and a wife and all these things. And I'm proud of you.
Thanks. You know, I'm appreciative of you, like, being open to it.
Yeah.
For sure. Because, I mean, you could take this and put it into anything and we'll get into the marriage matters things, but like, motorcycling is like a huge one for a lot of couples. Like you get married, you have kids, and then, you know, immediately it's usually the wife is going to be like, you know, we need to stop all risk adverse activities. And motorcycling is a huge one and a huge fight for a lot of couples, which I don't really do, but I'm
actually more,
you know, cycling. I feel cycling on road these days around here anyway is like,
well, I was just about to say, I'm more comfortable with you flying than I would be motorcycling because of the people on the road here.
Yeah.
If we lived in Utah and you were going on some country roads or mountain roads, that's a different story. If you're going on the roads here, I just don't trust the other people.
It's a thing, yeah.
You know?
There's other people involved with it. Whereas, it's pretty rare that I'm going to have like a mid-air collision with, you know, could happen with another type of aircraft, but that's part of the radar.
The odds of that, right?
No, I know, yeah.
And you're monitoring that constantly. Yeah.
So, good exposure. I mean, it was such a that park. If you ever are in Salt Lake City, you just drop, or you're in Provo, it's right in between the two, up to a point of the mountain. And this is like any typical, in Draper, any typical night, you just have all these people out here training in a really unique community of just like, there's some people
just. I was a sunset one night,
That was like a random Wednesday night, I think. And people flying, people practicing, and Superfly, they gave me a hack, so we went and picked up a new helmet, being safety conscious there. They have a really great training program there. So thanks to Chris and that crew there. It was really cool.
Yeah, but then we kind of turned into running mode after, so we had a couple days flying focus, and I was just working while you were doing that. And then we turned into running mode.
Yeah,
and
we went down to Provo, checked in.
So we checked into Provo, and then we met up.
Yeah, let's see, I got a cool picture of you, and I thought I had D'Amato on here. Come on.
The group photo.
Of course, I have a lot of, I'll start with this one.
You and Kira D'Amato reunited.
Pacer, buddy. Yeah, so you got to meet her in the parking lot. She was super energetic as usual. We got her new book, Don't Call It a Comeback, which actually I think you'll enjoy probably more overall than me, because it's just like about coming back like kind of in your 30s as like I feel like we're not getting to your performance yet, but like you kind of missed out on a calling a little bit of just like being an athlete, like truly.
I agree.
Like you didn't know you were a runner. You totally got it. Like, and you know you can be faster even after Saturday's race.
I mean, I started running 7 years ago now, and I ran 3 marathons, just kind of like whatever. And then I got into ultra running, and after I had Charlotte.
I'm blocking your head there, sorry.
No, it's fine. And after that, I never really trained for anything. And then I just started training more consistently and getting faster and faster and faster. And I'm hitting PRs, if you will, in my long runs, because I've never raced anything.
Yeah.
And then even this year, I didn't have that speed work or anything. I just was running a base with a long run because I love a long run. And
and
I
obviously
have a huge PR.
And huge potential.
And now I'm like, okay, time for another 30 minutes off. You know, I just think that I can.
Yeah.
But I never discovered that until now, my 30s.
Yeah, and so it's like very similar to Kira, where, I mean, she ran competitively. She was in college. She ran against some of the top people and was one of the top, but like took a time off for her kids, and then kind of blew back onto the scene and very quickly set the American record when I paced her in Houston. And yeah, it's just like, I totally see. And she really just kind of started getting back to it because she went and did a marathon. And then it was like, I think it was like 3 hours.
Yeah.
But then it was like, oh, there's this OTQ that you can get. And it's like, you know, dip under the 2:45 back when it was and stuff like that. So we'll read through that book. And I mean, obviously I'm excited because I have a small piece of it too. And we've always been more and more open with each other. So just about our lives and stuff, and just sharing the difficulties, because everybody has something, right? And it's been cool to just know somebody now. It seems like a lot longer time, like, you know. So catching up on the run and then getting to meet the team. They have the Run Elite program, REP.
Yeah, REP with BYU. And the REP team really tries to foster that Olympic level potential.
Yeah, and they obviously have like a good feeder team with BYU. Like a lot of their athletes are just like
huge successful track team. Yeah.
So it's really cool. And then everyone was like ridiculously nice.
Well, we met up. So the girls were running tempo runs essentially.
On the road, they're getting ready for grandmas. So there's Aubrey and McKenna and Habs was the other guy that was running, getting ready either for the halves or the full soon. And
then you had the guys on the track.
Yeah, so we were a little disappointed. I was very disappointed.
That, like, I even told him before, I'm like, don't be starstruck here.
The crew got divided, so it was like, Kira's like, hey, I'm not sure the workout yet. We're going to be on the track. We're going to be on the road, And then it was like, okay, we're going to the roads. Meet up here. And we got there. It's like, oh, the boys are on the track today.
And who's on the track?
Yeah, it's like Mantz and Young. Yeah. And there's a whole new crew there as well. But then it was like, okay, workout's done. Do you want to come back to the weight room? And I was showing it a little bit earlier, but we were in the BYU weight room, got a little bit of a tour of everything. And every single person would just like, whether they were like the coach, the trainer, the biomechanist, Olympic athlete, American record holder, it didn't matter. They stopped and introduced and were truly
Mantz,
interested.
Clayton Young, they were doing squats next to us and just chatting us up.
Chill, yeah.
It was great.
And I felt like there was not really any like break in of like, hey, who are you? And it was just kind of like straight into like, you know, like young. It was just like, oh, like Rachel was just in Tokyo. We love your bandit kit that you have. It's all Tokyo. He's like, yeah, you know, like fingers crossed. I've never got to go there before. Like I've run for A6, which is like base there, but you know, fingers crossed I get into the world championships and I get to go to Japan. Then the next morning, it's like he's going to get to go to Japan.
It was really cool.
And Mantz was like obviously very rushed because it turns out like literally like that morning he was announcing his American record chase at Chicago this year. So like he's going after it officially. But he was still like super chill in there. He was the only one who really didn't stick around. And then Jared Ward comes in, just a legend who helps out with the teams, kind of bouncing back and forth between the UK still. But we were just talking about like what car do you drive because you have all these kids and we have kids and it's like.
Yeah, because he has what, 5 kids? Six kids,
and like all the struggles of like his, like you'd think he's just like, just so peaceful. Oh right?
We were sharing the same, you know? Like,
but like his
fights about who gets the middle seat in the back row, and it was hilarious.
So it was just like, it was so fun, and like, really enjoyed our time there. And I think you've obviously felt like you had a lot of imposter syndrome.
Oh, I was crying the day before the marathon. I'm gonna get emotional talking about it. Yeah, because I already have, and I've gotten a lot better of trying to not to compare myself to you. And I don't as much anymore, but I feel inferior at times. And, you know, like I feel embarrassed actually when you're talking about, oh my gosh, you're so fast. I'm like, well, I'm not, right? I can do better. I know I can do better. And you're so proud of me, and I'm so grateful for that. But then, you know, I'm working through my inferior feeling with you already. And then we go to a
place where
room,
I feel inferior.
Right, full of like freaking Olympians. And I'm like, and then you're like, oh yeah, she's running the marathon. And I was mortified. I don't think I told you this. Every time you said that, I wanted to shrivel up and die. You can't say that. I'm total shit. You can't, So I felt, and so the day before the marathon, I was very emotional, I think, and I was very tired, right? Because we just have had some bad sleep, and very emotional, feeling like I was a piece of crap, and you know, we were just in a room full of fast people, and then. And you're saying things and you're so proud of me and I love you for that and I'm so grateful, but that's just not what was going in my head.
Yeah, but it's all like completely normal and it's like something I had to go through, and I've told this story a lot, but like how I even really got to meet Kira wasn't directly, but when I signed up for the Marathon Project during COVID, it was to pace Sarah Hall, and they were just like, the coach and the agent were basically like, you haven't run the American record. Like, what makes you like, that you think you can do this? And it's like, well, I was like, Sarah hasn't run it either. And then it's like, that was kind of a moment where I was like, well, like, I'm like so much more invested than somebody that probably can just dip under that any day of the week. Like some of the people we met in that room, you know? So it's like totally normal. And then, it's like, so I paced Sarah and it you know, I had a great run. She was just a little bit off, and then Kira called after that and got to go to Berlin with Kira, and I've paced every year Houston now, and it's like
for the American record and
run faster every single time, and it's kind of just like, and PRing like my best, getting the best out of myself, and it's like, well, okay, if I'm not supposed to be here, then why do I just keep getting to be here? You know, why do I keep getting asked, or like, why are you just like in the presence of people? And at the end of the day, maybe it's even not so much about the performance, right? It's like about how much you care, just like that original point. Like, hey, I care that Sarah, or care that Kira is gonna like, one, like have an enjoyable marathon and tour of Houston, and she's gonna be safe. And
but in that case, you know, if I knew that they were depending on me, I'd be training my ass off. I mean, I have to show up, and that's how I am, right? I cannot fail, and that's just who I am. But yeah, but, you know, I find it interesting that, you know, going down this path of imposter syndrome, you know, I think what we talk about the most just with trot races that we put on is not who was the fastest, is who are those last 3 people that finish, because those are the most meaningful.
They're the most emotional. They've been out there the longest. They probably have like the craziest story, you know, like, well, everyone does, but yeah, they're just as celebrated, if not more. Actually, I've had more interaction, more time shared and enjoyment from like the DFLs, we call them. And especially at Wildflower, it was like giving them an award like that the first place got, like gave them the same award. And they're like, what's this? I'm like, you're DFL. I'm like, what's DFL? I'm like, you were dead fucking last. And like, and they'd laugh and then you just like have that whole moment. So,
but to them,
but to make it like
that finishing is the goal.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Time
surviving
aside, they survived just as much as first place survived.
Yeah,
if not
longer.
More. Yeah. And there's beauty in that too.
Yeah. But I mean, you have, and just like we're talking about with the flying, it's like you can relate these kind of things over to your office, right? Like you're young, you're very young for the level you've already reached. And we talked about this today.
I am the youngest person at my level.
Yeah.
And
for a director level.
I'm senior director now, and even at the director level, I was the youngest person at the director level. And I felt, I mean, and not to be vulgar here, but I truly felt like people were looking at me thinking, who did you blow to get here?
Right, yeah.
And that's not the case at all. But
you're like highly technically skilled.
Right.
You could do pretty much any job there, right? Like you understand it. You have knowledge, and also turns out you're like a really good people leader too, right? And doing a great job.
I'm trying, man. Well, some people are difficult,
people
but
are people.
People are people. Let me tell you.
It doesn't matter what job you're doing. Right? So.
Yeah, it's you know, I think imposter syndrome is something very real across running and career and everything.
Yeah, exactly.
And I deal with it, and you deal with it, and you know, I think that's important for people to hear.
All right, well, get into your imposter syndrome. We took a drive of the course after that really cool workout with RP. It was that same day, right? I think we drove up.
I think so.
Yeah. And we found the start line in the middle of the country. It was literally just a spray painted line.
There was an arch, okay, I forgot to update him. There was an arch and like a real start line once we started.
It was literally like, drive from Provo 26.2.
But you know what? I noticed that every mile marker, there was a 1, 2, 3, 4, every single one.
Spray painted?
Spray painted on.
Yeah, well, that's usually, it's USATF certified, so it's kind of how they do it. But it was just funny. It was like, and again, part of being in Utah, it was like, we went from downtown Provo, like with all your classic American restaurants and BS and stuff, into the mountains, and all of a sudden it was like we're in Yellowstone. You know, like the movie set.
It was so surreal. And then we took that was 20 minutes, right? And then we take another 20-minute drive, and it felt like we were in the Swiss Alps.
Yeah.
And we didn't get video of that or anything, but it just.
Oh, they had a Swiss town, like just outside of there.
Yeah, it was a Swiss town.
And a lake with people just boating and kite surfing and whatever.
So after that run with the rap team, we did a little hiking, we did a drive, and then we get to marathon day. And it was 51 degrees. It was so cold. So actually they had...
This is pretty cool.
Yeah, I
thought it was video, but yeah, they had the little fire pits. Like
tons of them.
Because they just kick you off a bus, right? And you had to...
Kick you off a bus.
The first bus was at 3 a.m., I think.
So that was interesting. So they say that, but when I got there, and they say the last bus is at 4:15, and I got there around 3:50. It was still... just a ton of people lined up. I didn't take a VIP bus or anything like that. I just kind of got
it's the same as Canyons, just lies.
Just whatever.
And on the day of, anything goes.
Anything goes. Yeah, they put you on school buses and then drop you. Yeah.
So the VIP wasn't even like a coach bus with a bathroom?
I mean, I don't know. I didn't wait. I just got in the line.
Gotcha.
And yeah, they just drop you, and there's a ton of porta potties, and there's a ton of fire pits. And that night, actually, or right after, when we got back to the hotel, I realized how smoky my hair was.
After your race.
After my race, just from standing in front of that fire pit. But it was 51 degrees and it was freezing to me. I was shivering. And the unfortunate part was, and I don't think I told you this either, or that I spilled water all over my throwaway jacket the night before, and I was wringing it out for like an hour, and just at different times. It was still wet the next morning.
Brutal.
And so it was freezing, and I had a damp jacket. I was so cold.
Just taking my long sleeve.
I know. But it was great. I mean, yeah.
Perfect running conditions.
It was perfect. And what was interesting too is that there was music by all the fire pits, but by the start line, everyone's just standing there. You can't hear music. You don't hear the race director. And you're just looking at the time and you hear nothing. And then all of a sudden a gunshot happens and you just go.
So it wasn't even like a trot race where you're like calling.
No, like you were calling like 10, 9, 8. I was expecting that because there was a DJ station there. But when you line up, it was just.
How did they even get the
looking
buses
at the time
past that start line to that little cul-de-sac at the turnaround?
Well,
did everyone just have to constantly move over?
No, so there was a field that they, I guess, used. And so no one was really allowed on the streets. If people got on the streets, they were starting to like say, get off the streets. Because the buses were there.
Interesting.
Yeah. But then
some thunder.
Yeah, there's thunder going on. But yeah, it was interesting because, there's hype music and there's the race director. And then you get to the start line and you hear nothing. And I'm looking at the time and all of a sudden a gunshot goes. And I'm like, oh shit, it's go time.
But they did have like a chip reader and everything going. So, okay, cool. So early morning start, sunrise.
It was at 6 a.m., sunrise over the mountain, beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, and you were like inside of the front range. So you're kind of like, you still had a whole range of mountains that you had to basically run through the Utah Valley.
And so Utah Valley is a downhill race, which I was pissed about running a downhill race because I wanted to run something flat. I wanted to run something truest to just kind of Houston as possible.
Yeah.
And not hilly. But finding a marathon in June is really hard. And we had plans essentially the second half of June. Yeah. So I knew that I couldn't hop into
This was your window, this weekend.
This one weekend was the only weekend I had.
Yeah.
And so this one, it was about 1,700 feet of loss. And there were times where I felt it, and there were times where it just felt flat. But there was almost 400 of gain, about 350 of gain. And those hills, you felt it too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and your pace fluctuated pretty well, like back up to like 9-minute miles, right, on some of their
so I ended up running with a pacer, and I had told him that my goal, I was like, sub 4 hour is a bad day.
Here we go. If you followed the stories, this was probably people's most favorite story of the day. I'm standing around waiting at mile 17. So yeah.
And I had told him 340, 345. Actually, I told him 345, but you were calculating 340 for me.
And that's like, I'll always, just so I can be there on time and in early, right?
Yeah.
But
so his early for me was 340.
Yeah, early was 340, and using my pace calculators and splits and everything, and following there wasn't any tracking, so I had to follow your iPhone and I'd relate to where you were on a map. But I got to experience for the first time being Mr. Spectator and like driving around a town that has a marathon going. Freaking hell, like I hate runners taking up the highway and like, why is this whole road closed? And then the cops are stressed and yelling at you like, can I turn here? Like,
well, then you're running.
They look like you're an
just
idiot.
From the running, there's always people illegally spectating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I got to experience that whole thing of like just trying to find you and like wanting to be there as many times as possible, leapfrogging. But I got to mile 17. It was freezing in the valley. I was right at what are the falls called that were?
I forget. Stewart?
No, and like the really famous.
Or the other one. No, Stewart was the other one. I don't remember.
Vale.
No.
Something Vale. Bridal Veil Falls. So I was at Bridal Veil Falls at mile 17, and then it's like all of a sudden like these pace groups are all coming and your pin is getting closer. So it was like 310, 315, 320, and your pin was like coming. And I'm like, of course. Oh, and then he went by, but I was just like, yeah, like told me like on a good day, like get under 4, but.
No, I told you bad day was 4.
Yeah.
But I was going for like 345 is what I told you.
But also like really sold me on the having trained, So it was like,
but I didn't train.
I know.
Right? I ran a 20 miler
you ran with 330.
A month before.
Yeah, ran with a 330 pacer, tucked in with him.
Well,
he was good energy.
So when I was lining up actually, I passed that 340, the 330. I was like standing and I'm like, 325 is my BQ.
Yeah.
And I just felt like I had not been able to hit workouts where I could have maintained that.
Yeah.
In hindsight,
It was the edge for sure.
it was the edge because I didn't train. In hindsight, I felt like because we ran so close to 325 for a while, because of my pacer's pace strategy, I probably could have hung on, but it would have been close.
But also his strategy was proper to the course, which was majority downhill in the front half, and then
so then I just said, you know what, I'm going to hang with the 330.
Yeah.
And I actually didn't intend to stay with the 330. I felt like I was going to jump up, but the 330, we were running like 7:30 to 7:40 for the first few miles. Just because, or probably like 6-7 miles, just because it was a bigger downhill those first few miles. And it wasn't a huge downhill, it was just more than the others.
Yeah.
But his pace strategy was actually really great because you have like 1 through 6.5 or so is that downhill, and he wanted to bank time. And his pace strategy on his band was actually like the fastest mile was supposed to be 7:40, but we were running faster. So we were banking time on top of his strategy. And then when you get to the uphills, his pace strategy was like an 8:30 to 9.
Yeah.
Because they were pretty steep actually, uphills. And between 6 and 11.5 and 11.5, there were uphills and big downhills too. And so we'd go up the uphills and we'd slow down. And then it got back after that uphill, like after 12, from 12 to 20, it was back to 740-ish. And
which is pretty much, you ended up averaging I
think like 755.
Yeah, 755.
But then the whole thing is after that, the last 6 is essentially, it's downhill, but it's pretty flat.
Yeah.
But it's hot and in the sun.
Yeah, exposed.
Very exposed in the sun. And so his whole thing was, you know what, we can slow down to 8:30 and still beat a 3:30.
Yeah.
And because we were so close for that like first 6 miles of that 7:25 pacer, you know, I felt like, I mean, we were a 1/10 of a mile away from him.
Oh, you were all packed in at 17 too.
I could have, come up. But once we got to those hills, I just felt like, you know what, I'm just going to hang tight. And there were times where I was pushing him because he and I ran together and stuck together the whole time. And I was kind of the only one that stuck the whole time.
Yeah.
That he pulled me back and he's like, I'm going to pull back. You can go. And I said, no, I'm going to go. I'm going to stay back.
Right.
And I said that a few times to him of like, no, I'm just going to hold back. It's fine. I'm good holding back.
Yeah. And then the last time I saw you, I think was mile 22. And I saw you come through with him. But then I got in the car
and 17 drove, and then 22.
22, and then I drove up a couple blocks to go to the finish line and passed you. And by then you had already gotten gapped. Like
I was probably like 0.05 behind him at that point. Yeah, you fell back. And I fell back.
So I was like, ooh, she's like on the line of that 3:30.
But then I finished probably 30 seconds ahead of him.
Yeah, you came in. I was looking for him first.
Yeah.
Because that's the last time I'd seen you.
But then I came in ahead.
So you closed that final 5.
And I saw you after I finished, hung out, did all this stuff, went back and got a chocolate milk, and then saw him finish.
Yeah.
And so I had gapped him again. So that was interesting.
Here's all your PRs for the day.
And this just shows, this
for
just
mile
shows that.
2, who does this? A 2-mile PR. I mean, you almost got your 1-mile PR. It's your second fastest ever mile.
Yeah, but the thing is, this shows that I've never run my potential.
No, exactly. Yeah,
right?
Anytime I see this for an athlete, I'd be like, yeah, clearly you could go and run
because I ran this and I felt like, because like I said, there were times where I told, his name was Will, no, I'll hang back with you. It's good that I'm not going to push it forward because my pace, I was comfortable. I could have kept going. I could have gone a little faster in those moments and passed him, but I decided consciously and told him that I was hanging back.
So if you can't see on the screen because it's audio.
Even then, I still significantly PR my marathon, but I PR'd my half. Literally PR'd 2 mile forward.
Yeah, everything. So on the screen is everything from marathon, 30K, half marathon, 20K, 10 mile, 15K, 10K, 5K, 2 mile, and almost a 1 mile PR.
And my 1 mile PR that I have was in a track workout with a recovery built into it.
Yeah, exactly, of course.
So, and that tells you I've never truly raced anything before.
Yeah.
And even then, even my marathon, I consciously made decisions to hold back in that time.
Yeah. Well, we just focused on the process though, and that was like fueling and the right shoes, comfortable. We did a little bit of got some new shoes in Utah.
Well, I had a model of those shoes.
But you already had been in that model.
Like multiple models ago.
Yeah, exactly.
And
so I think it was a safe thing to do.
It was
this,
yeah.
And we tested them out, gave them a workout.
I did 2 runs in them.
Yeah. So it all worked out.
And focused on nutrition.
PR.
And so that goes to show, I think there's a lot more potential for me. In this cycle, I PR'd literally everything without focused training.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens.
Get to that starting line healthy.
But I would recommend this race to anybody. I think
for sure.
Some people from Houston would struggle with it just from the uphills, and I did have the benefit actually in some of my non-training of just because we were traveling a lot, running hills in general.
Yeah.
We went to Belleville. I did the 20-miler in May at Bastrop, and a variety of training that we've done with hills already. So I kind of had that. I do the treadmill with hills every time I do the treadmill. So I think, this requires a little bit of hill training, but not too much.
Yep. All right. Well, we're 45 minutes in. Yeah. Try to wrap up some news stuff. We got Marriage Matters to cover.
Yeah.
Where do you want to go from here?
So going into the news, I think one of the big things, especially after meeting all of the Olympians, the new OTQ time is out.
Yeah. So 2:16 was the big drop. 2 minutes off the men's time.
But the women's stays the same.
Women's stays the same.
But the women's one dropped a lot last time.
Yeah, it went from 2:45 to 2:37.
Yeah.
So I feel it's a little aggressive because it's like when you had it was like 2:20 not long ago, like 2 cycles ago, and 2:45 or so. It really creates this like boom of running. So it's like, but if that carrot's like too far away, it's not encouraging to people.
Yeah.
I'm still encouraged by it. And I told you that. And I'm like, when we go to December, obviously I have to get into a different level of fitness and everything. But like going out at 108 is already the plan. Like we're in June.
Yeah.
And like I'm planning for December, like to come through halfway at the marathon project, 108. Like no doubts about it. Like why would I, unless training dictates something completely different than that, right? That's the plan. So
no, I think it'll be an interesting test. But I think the interesting thing about this is you look at all the people that were or had qualified to go to the trials last time versus, how many would be cut because of this new time.
Oh,
and
yeah,
it was
on the
like,
men's side, we went through the
100 and something cut?
Yeah, so I think off the top of my head, when we looked at the list, it was like 223 people had been under 218.
218, yeah.
And if you kind of just looked at where that line is now, you're definitely cutting.
I mean,
a good 100
it
got
to what, under 60 with the 218 or 216 time?
Yeah.
So that's a lot.
So the men's race is going to be...
But you know what? I feel like that's right. Because...
This gets into the whole debate on the Olympic trials.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, you're only trying to select 3 people. But also we saw from the trials last year, this is just a huge can of worms you just opened. So
sorry, y'all.
Even last year we saw Mantz and Young 1-2, but then we saw, gosh, I can't even remember the 3rd place, but 4th place was CJ Albertson. 3rd place was not guaranteed a spot because of World Athletics points or just basically the point system that they have. But because of CJ Albertson scoring points enough to get America on the list, because of him, 3rd place got to go. So there's a whole point system behind just sending your best 3 athletes. And also, who's your best 3? Is it on the day of the Olympic trials?
Right,
what if Galen Rupp that's one of the top marathons we've ever seen, just he hasn't had the build up or the day.
He had a bad day.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we see that all the time. People have a bad day.
Yeah, or just like the trials isn't even representative of what the Olympics is going to be, like whether it's like the climate or the race, the hills or whatever they're going to be in. So at the end of the day, you're only trying to choose 3 people, and you could also just choose it by a point system is kind of what the overall Olympic Committee is doing.
But other countries
like Canada, like they just give us this crazy fast, like I think it's now going to be like 2:09:30, but that's using like World Athletic Standards, like A standard. If you can be under that and you're top 3 in the country, you get to go. But if you're not, then we won't even send anybody. So that doesn't create the buzz. Right.
Well, I was just about to say, think about how, you go to a point system. Okay, but man, the trials are so fun.
They're huge. Exactly. Okay, and then, so the trials are fun, but it's a whole separate marathon for how many people? So this is where I was going to go. It's
we've talked about this. Yeah.
Okay, you're going to have a race.
The cost of that.
Yeah. Are you going to just have a marathon for 10 people? Because out of the 10, for sure, you've kind of picked the top 3 out of there. Or should you just open it up to 100 people, 200 people? Where's like that cost balance?
Well, now, I mean, let's say you base on last year's men's numbers, you're opening it up to maybe 60 people.
Yeah. So is that more exciting for people to watch? I don't know. And then who's going to want to put up the money for that? It's hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's a lot of commitment to various other constraints. Personally, if they just put it inside of an existing marathon.
Well, I was just about to say, or do you say, oh, hey, Houston
Marathon, 6:55.
I'm going to buy 50 entries from you.
Not even. I mean, they would host
whatever.
It, but separate start.
Yeah.
This is the trials.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or if they'd done that, but it was a separate day, but then you're having the streets open a whole nother time, but you have a different loop or something. It's a huge debate that's definitely, just because they put out a time standard doesn't mean we're going to have a trials. Yeah. I think that's still on the chopping block of what happens. Who's going to host this? How is it going to go down?
Yeah.
Who knows?
But if you go, and that's an interesting point too, of let's say you do, run the trials and you win, but your PR is 2:14, you're not going to make it. Yeah,
so there is a clause in there that actually, let's say somebody got into the trials and won just because they have the day of their life, but they don't actually hit the A standard. Like, you could potentially take all of the slots for the US and only one person would be allowed to go. I forget what this ruling is called, but essentially all these people that have the A standard would not get to go to the Olympics, and you'd only be able to send one person.
Even though they had a shit day that day.
Yeah, exactly.
And this random ass guy
won. The reason for setting really high standards actually protects your team. It allows you to send the 3, a full team. It allows you to send a full team. So there's all these other things to consider from the
and that's kind of more in line with Canada.
Exactly.
Yeah. You have to have that A standard.
But if you have a trials and there's a risk of somebody just showing up and winning and not in a good time.
Yeah, this guy got out of bed that day.
Imagine you have a habanero day. It could imagine it's
hot
it's
day,
in Houston in January. You could still have a 95 day
absolutely
with full humidity from the Gulf.
My first winter in Houston, my first Christmas in Houston, I remember waking up and putting my boots and sweater on, and it was 85 degrees and I was dying. I had to put on some shorts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways, we're gonna keep cruising on some news here. I had a fun one that I picked up. So 2 years ago, I went and trained with an old athlete that I had coached in high school, and we were in Aspen for his birthday. And I'm at ice cream standing on the corner, and I run into this guy, and he's like, yeah, you kind of look like an ultra runner. You look like a runner. Who are you? Whatever. And it ends up being this guy, David Korfman. And he just this past weekend became the 33rd person in the world to finish 100 miles.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty small group of people that have done this. But the really unique thing, he's actually a race director in Ohio, and his co-race director is Andy Jones, who is a Canadian that I broke his 50K Canadian record.
Awesome.
In the exact same park, almost 30 years to the day here in Houston, that he had set the Canadian record.
Oh, wow.
So we were talking, I'm like, I like the 50K, I just ran this and broke this record. And he's like, well, that's my race director friend, Andy. So really small world. Turns out that race that Andy Jones did the 50K record, he actually was going for the 50-mile record. And Ann Trayson broke the world record that day here in Houston in 91. And he got carted out on a stretcher from dying. Nice. So he's actually a 50K split. Really fast guy. Nice. So that was cool news to see. I was really happy to see Korfman take that. Other ultra runner news, we saw Heather Jackson, who I've seen pass me in every single race I've ever done against her. Black Canyon race,
the first one that I was pacing you at, she passed us with 3 miles to go.
Yeah, and like every time I've paced somebody else at Western States,
Yeah.
she's come by and passed us up. I thought I did have a picture of her. Yeah, like superior athlete, but she has a really unique career because she transitioned over from being an elite triathlete and now is doing this ultra running, but it looks like she went back to the bike because I saw this on Cycling Weekly. She did a time of just under 21 hours for 358 miles on a gravel course.
It's crazy.
And like was in the top of the field. I can't remember what she came overall. It says somewhere in there, but in Unbound XL. And she's on the starting list of Western States. So that's a huge ride to do just about a month.
My butt hurts on a bike after an hour. I can't even imagine 21 hours. And I know you train for that. Too. But yeah, gravel.
But
good job.
She is an absolute beast.
The other news was, I think this one.
From the trail world.
From the trail world is very interesting because you just set an FKT.
In a national park.
In a national park, going off trail a little bit.
A lot of it.
A lot of it, because that is part of the FKT for the 5 peaks in the Guadalupes in Texas. Yeah. Well, Sunseri did the Tetons.
The Grand Teton
back in September of 24. And he did it in 2 hours, 50 minutes and 50 seconds, 1377.5.
Elevation gain.
And he's in a lawsuit.
Yeah, and it looks
it's because that he cut a switchback on his descent, and essentially the National Park Service
took him to court
and prosecuted this for criminal charges.
Yeah.
And there is so much hair on this. It is insane.
I have lots to say about it.
Okay. Go ahead.
Well, okay, yeah, but the charges though, and this is where a lot of the news things is saying it's over criminalized for the rulings.
Well, so Trump this year passed an executive order that essentially introduces this over criminalization of federal regulations. And so there's this actually now broader concern because eventually the National Park Service decided to withdraw their criminal charge.
Yeah.
And
which actually is what I saw today, was that it has been withdrawn as of today.
It was like 3 days ago.
Okay.
No, it was back in May, but a few days ago. They've decided to withdraw their criminal prosecution.
Which was going to be up to like 5 years in prison for this guy cutting a switchback.
Correct.
And a fine and banned from the parks.
So originally NPS decided to prosecute the case because it was high profile and they wanted to deter future switchback cutting to preserve park resources in other parks. And so the National Park Service, went down the criminalization path. Trump in May passed this I can't say that word, criminalization, executive order. And so then they kind of withdrew. However, the Justice Department is still pursuing the trial. And so now there's this big concern politically of, well, is the Justice Department actually complying with federal policy? Are they going too far? And it's interesting.
In this case originally, well, not even the case, just like the record itself gained some traction in the world because of that switchback cut. Like FKT reviewed the GPS, just like they reviewed mine, FKT.com, and they, Fast and No Time, said like, oh no, you cut the course. Just like in a race, you cut the course, like you have to stay on trail. So when I was at Guadalupe National Park, Mountain National Park, I was working for the park ranger, which is the only one because there's so many budget cuts under all this new stuff. And part of my role there working for him was to keep people on the trail. And so when there is an existing trail, yes, you can be cited like a fine for taking a cut off of the switchbacks, which I yelled at people every day, like not yelled, but like guided kids basically
And
that
the
would.
fine is what, $500 or something?
It could be 5,000
Okay,
in some cases,
yeah.
but. And then I would rebuild these rock walls
Mm-hmm.
on the existing trail to prevent people or to discourage them from going over. But it's sometimes really difficult to tell what is the trail and what is the shortcut too, right? Because they become so defined, and that's kind of what happened in this case. The Park Service is claiming that there was a sign that's like, stay on the trail,
Yeah.
and then the other side of it on the bottom is like, avoid erosion by staying on the trail.
Yeah.
And part of the case actually for him was, well, in your guidebook or like at the sign, it says carry water, right? So is that a law? Like, are you going to fine me $5,000 if I don't carry water? No, it's a suggestion.
Well,
and then, so then there's carry water, and then there's stay on the trail. How do I differentiate between what's a legally enforceable law versus...
So there's I forget what it was called, I was reading, but there's a series of regulations, if you will, that are really obscure and hard to decipher. And then it just becomes like grasping at straws, where lawyers are making assumptions on legality of these types of things. And no one really knows.
Yeah, but then you ask them, okay, well, who's supposed to understand the rules? And it's like the park user. It's not even the person enforcing it. And
but
you're like,
my point is
Come
the
on.
attorneys can't even understand
Exactly.
the rules. They're
I know.
fighting over the rules.
Yeah.
And so actually, morning of the trial, they kind of came back and said, reiterated an offer of deferred prosecution, 1,000 hours of community service, and a
Wow.
ban from Grand Teton National Park.
For 5 years, I think.
And so Sunseri's extended a counteroffer, so it's 60 hours of community service, and replaced the ban with a restriction tied to alleged conduct, basically, depending on the trial. And
But I mean, this guy's getting hit with
still
a
pending.
federal crime.
Well, they've withdrawn their criminal
now.
but the Department of Justice, we don't know, still could be pursuing that. We'll have to see. So
Yeah.
it really, at the end of the day, is going to come down to a judge.
Yeah. But okay, the truth of the matter is, like, you cut a course, right? And like you are there and you're bringing some attention to it, so you got to do it properly.
Cut a course not on a proper trail.
Right. And so and I wanted to clarify like the difference between the FKTI did. There was no existing trails, and you're actually allowed to explore national parks.
Yeah.
Like if there's no existing trail, you're still allowed to go wander in the forest.
Yeah.
You're still allowed to go wander mountains and things. And so I was completely within the confines of the rules.
But we
given
had
my
talked
route.
about this, I think we were driving when we were talking about this in Utah, of, well, if this is the case, then NPS could go look at the FKT site and potentially
put
just
together a
rail
list.
anybody,
Yeah. I mean, I think Strava, like opening that whole thing up to the world, I mean, everyone from employers to government, anything.
I mean, we have confirmed people cutting
yeah.
our
Yeah,
courses based on their Strava.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
It's,
The evidence there is, you
this
can't
could
deny
be
it.
setting an interesting precedent for using this type of data to really crack down.
Yeah. What else was I going to say on this though? It was, definitely like there's some risks there. And like if you're doing this kind of stuff in the parks, and if you go and read my posts that I put out, like also just being there part of search and rescue, I'm like, this kind of behavior, I don't want to encourage like running super light in the mountains, even though light is fast and fast is safe in a lot of cases, like not going with enough water, or like not having enough support,
is also
or like
relative.
Yeah. So like I already kind of had that wherewithal of like, you set a record, people are going to pay attention. So you better do it right. And also also make sure you're not encouraging people to do the wrong thing.
Yeah.
So if you're going to get made example of.
Yeah.
And it's scary though, because my mom sent me that and I was like immediately like, well, that could be me.
You're like, are they coming for me next?
Yeah, I know. Are they going to like, do I need to start clearing my Strava like some other people
All right.
know that are in trouble?
I know, right? we know some people in trouble.
Like hiding their tracks from the government.
Yeah.
Well, there was that case when Strava kind of first became popular that all the military guys were running the perimeter of their base over in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
And they basically perfectly mapped out the heat map of the perimeter of their base.
Yeah.
Because it's like this thing like, oh, well, there's the base.
I mean, we've even heat mapped our neighborhood now where there was no heat map because of us running. it's a very interesting privacy
And actually, I
concern.
just got an email from Search and Rescue that are like, you are not allowed to record your official, like my search and rescue I did, but preventative search and rescue was fine in the mountains. But like when we're on a task, like it's evidence, because we're there for criminal investigation, searches, body.
When you're on, your FKT while you're on your break is fine.
No, but even me, like.
But logging your hike while you're on search is not fine.
On an official search. Like
Correct.
if I'm just monitoring a trail,
right,
that's fine.
Okay.
Preventative search and rescue.
Yeah, but if you're trying to find a body, for example,
Exactly.
or whatever it may be. Yeah.
Got some crazy call outs the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
For a lot of evidence, a lot of bodies, a lot of things. That is, like, if I record it on my phone, I have to hand over my phone to the law enforcement for them to have the data. Like, not the whole device.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Anyways, interesting stuff.
Interesting. All right, coming out of the news.
Take us home.
We'll just do
1:05
some
on the clock.
quick updates and then go into our marriage matters, which is a quick topic. So our home renovation, 2 weeks later,
What a
is
disaster.
still going.
I mean, it's great. It's amazing. We have 2 running ACs that feel incredible, like
Amazing.
a hotel.
No humidity in the house. I mean, low
50%.
humidity. Yeah, I mean, that's normal.
Down from 80.
Down from 80, running all the time. Yeah.
But holes and patches, still painting to do everywhere.
Yeah, covered furniture.
Furniture is covered in drapes. And
Everything's dusty. Yeah, it's a disaster.
one of the pipes for the drainage didn't get connected in the girls' bathroom, and that leaked through to the main living room. So we had a full-on like
ceiling, yeah, like half our
4
ceiling. The
by
whole
8
center of our
foot.
ceiling started
Gone,
yeah.
yeah.
It had to be redone, and it just needs paint now. Everything's patched. It's just paint for the most part. So when we come back in July, because we're about to go on a 2.5-3 week trip to Tahoe and then back.
Yeah.
When we come back,
And we're gonna podcast on the road. We have to.
yeah,
Yeah.
we're going to essentially come back and not travel. I said we are going to
settle into this
I'm
house.
I'm somebody that I need my safe space, and my safe space is my home, and I need it to be clean.
Very clean.
Very clean, probably cleaner than most. And it's a disaster, and I'm trying to find things, and there's just shit I don't need everywhere. So I'm like, we are going through every cabinet and every drawer and cleaning and getting rid of stuff.
Yeah, right. I'm going flying.
Well, for a week.
There's the second week I need to talk to you about.
No.
At the end.
No.
The first week and the last week.
No. You heard it here, folks. No. No. Okay. Anyway.
Marriage matters. Next.
Anyway, Marriage Matters week 4 is about communication. No. Yeah, live communication doesn't work for me. Anyway, a lot of the stuff that we've talked about is, kind of hinted around communication, and this goes straight onto the topic. And this is really about not just what you're saying, but how you're saying it and what your body is saying.
What was like the percentage they said that?
So 7% of communication is verbal, 38% is tone, and he will attest to this. I get so frustrated because we'll just be talking and he'll be like, I don't even know. What do you say?
No.
I mean, just no, or
Yeah.
I'm thirsty. But
Yeah,
he'll just be
right,
like,
yeah.
I'm thirsty. And I'm like, what the hell is wrong with you?
Yeah. What's wrong with us? Or what's
why
wrong?
are you mad at me? Like, calm down. Don't be so
Oh
defensive.
yeah, I'm hungry is probably a good one.
Yeah, don't be so defensive. And
But I'm
he's like,
literally
well, I don't
just
have a tone.
saying it.
I'm just saying it, but he's not. He has a tone, but I have a tone too.
So that stuff can
it's
be
fine.
taken the wrong way.
And 55% is body language, facial expressions, and gestures. But I think that 38% tone is like the most that hits home for us.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it just immediately sets each other off if it's said the wrong way.
Yeah. And all right, so then
we were going to talk about this. Our latest binge show we started yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
Is Landman, and that is me, that grumpy guy.
Okay,
the
so he
lead
is
character.
so grumpy. Actually, you know what? When we were in a coffee shop in Utah talking to the couple, I was talking to Jennifer, right, is her name, and you and Javier were talking about, sorry, I'm name dropping, shout out if you're listening to this, about, random stuff, normal stuff.
Men stuff.
Men's stuff. And Jennifer and I were talking about hormones and men's hormones and testosterone and your balls and like all these other things.
We literally just met somebody in a coffee shop, and that's
we got deep. And we talked about that. Anyway.
We talked about business and things. Anyways.
Yeah. So
wait, where are we going
with
that?
Communication.
But I was just saying we were going to drop what show we were watching.
Oh,
but also this guy's tone in here, the character, that grumpy guy.
Yeah, so she was talking about how he's grumpy. And I said, oh, you are so grumpy. I'm like, the older you get, the grumpier you are. And Landman, the main character, he is just no bullshit, tell it like it is.
Yeah.
And that is you. And he's laughing the whole time because he's like, oh my gosh, exactly. Yeah, the whole time. Yeah. But it's a good show. And circling back, we haven't Amazon purchases. We haven't purchased anything unique on Amazon lately. It's all been kind of BAU. But I got a random item I didn't order, which was so weird. And it was one of those like
dental mirrors.
Dental mirror, this mirror on a stick that you look at your teeth with. I don't know why I got it, but I got it. So I have one of those now. Anyway, communication. So I think this is very important to us, and a reminder to us is often couples fight about what they think the other person said or meant because of nonverbal cues. Remember, 7% is what you say. 93% is nonverbal.
Like when I'm trying to apologize. Sorry, let me rephrase that. When I am apologizing.
He's not apologizing.
When I say,
you even know?
Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry.
Even in Marriage Matters, he spoke up in group and asked one question.
Oh, I did.
The only time, and he never speaks up. He's not somebody that will talk in a group unless he has to or it's his job. And he raises his hand and he says, how do I apologize to where she will accept it? And let me tell you, we're in the middle of a fight and you go, you know what? Well, I'm sorry, blah, 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 blah. That is not an apology.
I agree, that's not an apology.
Okay, wow. It's recorded now.
But I'm talking about at the end.
No, at the end, you hold my hands and say, I'm sorry, it's gotten better.
Yeah, but you want like a deposition thing of like, I'm sorry for
yes.
taking accountability for
yes.
all of the things that...
I don't need a checklist, but I need some type of awareness that you know what you did. Anyway.
So you did it, so you might be right.
Anyway.
You might be.
Every time he says I'm right, in passing, I'm like, can you say that again? Anyway, just going over this quickly again. Make sure your words and body language match. It's not what you say, but how you say it. This one is, I feel like, important because it's something that I do, but you don't like. Be assertive and clear. Your spouse is not a mind reader, except you think I'm too assertive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Too forward and immediate.
I'm very much, I need this.
Yeah.
I'm giving you a roadmap into my mind and heart. And
No,
you're
not.
like, whoa.
Well, because, yeah, you give me not just the roadmap, you give me like the destination, everything. It's like, it doesn't get to be my idea. It doesn't get to be my timing. It doesn't get to be my way of romanticism.
I feel like if I say I need XYZ, you still get shut down. Even if I just give you...
Yeah, because now it's ruined that you told me. But then you'll say, well, if I don't tell you, then I'll never get it.
It's true. So I'm assertive and I tell you what I need.
So there's somewhere in the middle there.
But you don't even like to hear the destination of what I need, And so then over time, when I tell you initially I need this, and I let it go a few days.
I was about to give an example of like, I want flowers, but then I was like, you know what? I got you flowers on Saturday.
You did get me flowers on Saturday
for your race, but like you would be like, I bought all these flowers and I arranged them this, and this, and I want you to give them to me at this time in this place.
No. I say I want flowers.
But that's how like bad it feels
and
like
then
for me. That it's like not my idea.
If I say that's how it feels to you.
Right,
but all I'm saying is I would like flowers. But I've never said I want flowers.
No, I'm just using this as a simple example.
Yeah. But I say I want flowers, and then I give it a couple days, and then I say it, I don't get it, and then I say it again. And then I start saying it a few more days more frequently in a row. And then I start saying it multiple times a day because I'm not getting it. And the whole time he's withdrawing more and more and more.
Right, yeah. Being pushed away.
You have to like I'm just being assertive into what I need, and that's important. If you told me you need something, I would do everything I can to meet that need for you.
Well, maybe I'm watering some seeds for the next 6 months to give you the best flowers.
Yeah, but you're not. That's the thing.
Moving on. Enough analogies.
Anyway, I think all right, so build a bridge, not a wall when you're communicating. You don't want to shut each other out. Listen. Do not multitask. Actively listen and make eye contact. That's something that you are very, very struggle with, is your phone. Because I'll be looking at you and you're not looking at me. But something I do, but I've gotten a lot better at, is there is a time and a place for hard conversations.
Yeah, and we discussed that before of at the end of the day, exhausted in bed, when I'm half asleep, not a good time.
But that's not been a problem in a while. That's been good.
But we've learned that.
Right. I think we're okay with this, but a lot of people struggle with this, is don't always try to solve a problem. Sometimes your spouse just wants you to listen. Mm-hmm. And I think we're usually okay with that. You don't always try to solve my problems. I think where we fight is when I want you to just hear me out. And that comes into like debate versus dialogue. So debating is like, I need to convince you of my point of view, right versus wrong. And we both kind of get into that convincing stage, rather than, I dialogue, I'm going to put it on the table. I'm going to put it on the table, or you're going to put it on the table. And then the other person has nothing to lose by listening to the other point of view. And that's kind of the way you have to think about it. You know, and you don't always have to disagree or combat it. Just listen, right? And shut it off. And then another thing is ask clarifying questions. I think that's our most recent struggle.
Oh, for sure.
That, when we are,
if we are fighting,
intention? We are fighting about what the other person said or meant because of the nonverbal cues, like I said a minute ago. But we need to ask clarifying questions because we assume, and then we both get into a fight about the other person's or our own assumptions, and we're fighting about actually we're on two different wavelengths.
Yeah. Then you're fighting about the fight, not about the topic at hand.
Yeah, and then you're not even fighting about the same thing. It's not a debate, not a competition. And this was, I think, the most interesting thing is the average couple spends no more than 3 minutes a day in focused, undivided communication.
And the recommendation was to go and try, the challenge was 10 minutes.
Challenge is the weekly challenge, face-to-face, undistracted, undivided communication for 10 minutes a day.
And I got that confused with the 1 minute. I was like, 10 minutes? That's crazy.
I was like, okay, I put my notes in the podcast file. And he's quiet. 10 minutes?
We have to spend 10 minutes?
I'm like, what? But he thought it was the hold hands and look at each other's eyes it was the recommendations 1 minute.
Yeah, that was another challenge.
That was a different challenge. So he made that. He's like, 10 minutes? And I'm like, you can't talk to me for 10 minutes?
Yeah. Undivided attention, 10 minutes.
Anyway, we've had a lot of conversations about things around communication, but this is, that direct communication, say what you mean, non-verbally try to enforce what you mean as well, and listen.
Yeah.
And ask questions. We both need to do better at that. Clarify.
Yes.
And that's it. We'll stop there. I had other topics, but we are way over topic.
Yeah,
over time.
It's probably, people could probably slice this one up a little bit, hour 20 on the clock.
Yeah.
So leaving later this week to drive for me. You get to fly.
Yeah, so he'll be driving starting Friday, lunch, afternoon, whatever.
All the way to Nevada.
With his 3 girls.
Yep.
And then Charlotte and I will fly on Monday when he's getting in and land into Nevada.
Yeah. But we're there for work too. Like we have trail conference or trail cons going on. We'll be there for the Broken
And
Arrow.
I'll be working remote. I took off 2 days for trail con.
Yeah.
And then
I'm pacing with Hans Troyer at Western States before we start our long road
and then
trip.
we have a
longer
road trip back. But all of us will be in the car on the way back, but we're going to stop at Yosemite and Vegas and Tucson and Fort Davis.
Yeah.
And
have a little bit of fun.
Yeah,
to
we'll
split
have
up the
some
drive.
fun on the way back.
Yeah. So, all right. Thanks for joining. Be sure to ask some questions. And I don't know if I checked the poll. We were talking about Easter traditions.
Eggs versus basket. Yeah, we never checked the poll.
But it's still open, so go ahead and hit that. And check out. I'll be doing a training review today as well, and I'll post that on my channel just to get more into my own build up for Marine Corps, the next things coming up. And and that's that.
All right.
Back to it. Have a good week, everybody.